Welcome to this next session. As I told you at the opening, this is part of the holistic AI section, if you want, the pillar. And we're going to go and do a deep dive into legal and law, which is a fun topic. I've learned already a lot from the pre-talk because it's very far from my bed, as we say in my language. So I'm looking forward to learn a lot. Let me welcome Lorie Almon, Chair and Managing Partner from Seyfarth Shaw, and then Jen Leonard. Oops, that screen is moving. And then Jen Leonard, founder of Creative Lawyers. So that feels like already a nice friction, established part and then a new part in terms of looking at where AI and innovation can already play. So why don't we start the conversation by just introducing yourselves, and then also at very high level, how does AI intersect with your work, with your industry, with the efforts that you do? I'm not even sure who wants to kick us off.
Sure. Thank you all for having us here and giving us your time this morning. As you heard, I'm Chair and Managing Partner of Seyfarth Shaw, which is a global law firm with 18 offices around the United States and the globe. And I've been in my role for, I guess I'm at the point of counting months now, about 10 months. So a lot of this is very new to me. But on top of that, one of the things that's really new and exciting for me is being able to lead in this time of extraordinary change. And how AI is working into our firm is something we'll certainly talk about as we go on, and how it's moving into the legal profession is something we can talk about too. But the very short version is it's happening rapidly and unpredictably and with tons of excitement and a fair amount of trepidation. And so that's what makes it interesting.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to be part of this conversation. My name is Jen. I am the founder of a company called Creative Lawyers, which I just celebrated my first business birthday last week. And before that, I worked for about a decade at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, teaching courses on the legal profession, law firm business models, innovation in law, design thinking for lawyers, and built the law school's innovation center. And to Lorie's point about everything changing so quickly, when I decided to leave and start my own company, I was really going to support law firms and corporate legal departments in thinking about innovation broadly and design thinking specifically. Generative AI was not even on the radar when I left, and now it's about 90% of the work that I do. But I'm really excited to have the time and the space to help my clients stay abreast of what's happening, because I really do think you need somebody who is your Gen AI scout to figure out what is happening out there, to help you educate your workforce and your lawyers and your legal professionals. So that's what I do today. I do a lot of AI literacy for lawyers, strategic consulting with corporate legal and law firms to get our arms around this very slippery, fast evolving technology and figure out how to deploy it in a way that elevates legal services and makes practice better for lawyers.
What a great combo you are, the both of you. I mean, this is a powerhouse and sets us up for a whole new future of legal as far as I can see. On that future and on that technology adoption, as I said, I'm not an expert by any stretch in legal and law, but I'm I can call myself an expert in innovation, I think. And one thing that I've always learned is that as it happens, legal is always the slowest to innovate. Why is law and legal always the slowest business almost the slowest business to innovate and tap into new opportunities?
I think one of the reasons that law is at the slower end, and this is as a group, I think we as a firm try to buck the mold.
The industry, right?
Yes, I'm just giving us a plug here. But I think there's a couple reasons. The first is probably legal education. And that higher ed may actually be even slower than law when it comes to adoption of this. But as lawyers, we're trained to spot problems. We're trained to think about risk. We're trained to worry on behalf of our clients and to try to think how can we mitigate that risk as much as possible. And so when you've got somebody whose entire education and then their practice is around how do I make things less risky, less worrisome. Lawyers at a certain point start to get hardwired to think about change as bad and trying to buck that. So there's almost a constitutional issue in the lawyer that you have to cut against through your culture, through your training, what have you.
And there's also the part that your business model calls for being paid by the hour, right?
Well, yeah,
So
we can have a whole conversation about that. It's one of the very few. I mean, when you go to buy a cup of coffee, you don't say, all right, I'm going to time you and figure out how long it took you to make it, and then I'll decide how much I pay you for it. It just has a value, and that's what you pay for it. But value-based billing has not been part of the business model. I mean, law firm business models are pretty much the same as they were 200 years ago. Yeah. And if you buck that and you seize the opportunity and start defining value as your client defines it, you have enormous opportunity. But lawyers aren't so quick to change.
Yeah.
And to build on Lorie's great points about the training and the way that we think about the world as lawyers, there's research on lawyer personality types and how we are different from the general population. And one of the main differences is that we are much more skeptical than the average person about anything because we're trained to look at a fact pattern and poke holes in it. So at the beginning of the Gen AI boom, there was a whole, uprising of skepticism across the profession. And most of my presentations used to be about this part, about how to overcome lawyer skepticism. And I think it's interesting that in less than 2 years, now my clients are saying, you can skip over the skepticism part. Like, people believe that this is happening. And for lawyers, that is a big, big deal. It took the ABA, I think, until 2022 to issue guidance on how to use the reply all function on your email. Hopefully you guys figured that out a little bit sooner than the ABA gave you guidance. But the ABA has already issued this July guidance and a formal opinion about how to use generative AI. So if it took them almost 30 years for reply all and less than 2 years for Gen AI, we really are experiencing rapid change, but we're used to looking at precedent and how have we approached this in the past. And so we really need to develop entirely new skills and mindsets about what do you do when something truly is unprecedented, and how do you shape the future of the way you deliver legal services as opposed to the way that you think about the substantive law and building on the precedent there.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone earlier today that I do wonder if the pandemic is actually why this is changing, because we had this incredibly unpredictable, uncertain situation thrust upon us with no warning, and we had to figure out how to navigate something wildly uncertain. And companies went to their most trusted advisors, their lawyers, and formed these deep partnerships about thinking how to navigate the uncertainty, and you had to do it fast. And it sort of, I think it built some muscle strength that wasn't really there in the legal profession. And so this is way more fun to talk about than the pandemic was. But you maybe there was finally some evolution in the lawyer mindset.
The mindset is so important, right? We talked a bit about already at the start here about this, growth mindset or movement mindset, and getting people to go and think bigger and different is so hard. But once you get it done, then you can build on that momentum that you create, right?
And to that point, I get the chance to have a bird's eye view into lots of different firms and lots of different corporate legal departments. And at the moment, I think this will change as the tools sort of shake out and there are some best practices. To me, the difference is not who has the biggest budget to test all the tools, who has the best team in place to figure this out. To me, it is all about the leadership. Yep. When you go to a firm and the leaders are saying this is real, we are taking this seriously, we're adjusting the way that we price our services, we want to co-design the future with our clients, I have every confidence that they will figure it out. And then I go to other firms where they're sort of like, we'll sort of skirt around the edges and have a couple CLE programs on this, but we don't really think that this is going to change. And it's striking to see the difference in those different organizations. And I leave those organizations feeling like, wow, this is the moment where leadership really, really matters.
It is no surprise, I think, that Satya Nadella started the whole reinvention of Microsoft, all based on reading the book Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. Mm-hmm. So if anybody has not read the book Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, this is or Mindset I think it's called, but it's focused on growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And it's very, very powerful. So nice to hear you describe that as well, and how you see that mindset shifting in action. Yeah. Wonderful. Now, you find yourself in a very interesting spot then, right? With all this, history and heritage and being at the low bar, and now you can take this into a whole new reality. So what do you see as specific opportunities that you want to tap into?
So I actually think when lawyers started thinking about this, and corporate legal in particular as the purchaser of legal services from firms, they would love nothing more than to get rid of paying for junior associate work. That is the work that really irritates them more than anything else, right? Because if you think and you oversimplify the reason corporate legal departments go to their firms, it's for two reasons. One is to handle overflow work. So your in-house lawyers have the experience as a litigator, but they don't have teams of people. So you need to hire person power through your law firm. And that usually comes in the form of junior associate work. And I cannot tell you, and if you're in corporate legal departments, you know how frustrated people get with those bills. But the second category of work is the place where corporate legal doesn't mind as much spending money, which is the place where they really need the most sophisticated lawyers in the country to help them navigate issues where they don't have the in-house expertise. So at the outset, even though corporate legal would really like to replace that junior associate work, I think the way, at the state of the technology now, it works best to augment experts. So a lot of firms are trying to figure out how to change the work at the junior level, but I don't think the technology is there yet for that work. But where it works really well is if you have an experienced labor and employment partner like Lorie, and she knows how to look at an output from a generative AI tool and critique it, right, and adjust it and make it stronger. So I'm seeing and helping firms think more creatively and more broadly about those expert level questions while we figure out how the technology can augment the junior associate work. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know what you say.
No, I agree totally. I think the initial reaction to a lot of innovation in AI is to focus immediately on efficiency, and that's real, and it's a big thing, and it's real. You know, there's some very person hour heavy tasks that can be done much faster by AI, and that technology will catch up and will be better at doing document review or due diligence and things like that. But the opportunity that I think there's a huge amount of opportunity, to your point, about thinking about how you deliver better legal services, how the quality is higher, how the depth of analysis is greater. We're thinking about ways in which, how can you tap the knowledge that's out there in the industry, in the world, to bring information about, sort of deal terms and analytics and statistical likelihood of particular outcomes by delving into this huge, massive body of data that, would take tens of thousands of hours for human beings to analyze. But if you get the right tools in place and you pull that together and kind of scrape that information from a broad array of sources, you could be giving your clients insight and analytical information that they've not been able to tap into in the past. And when you pair that with the judgment of experienced senior lawyers, now you're getting this next level capability that you really just couldn't do because nobody was willing to pay for tens of thousands of hours for you to get, a small incremental change. But when AI can, in a few minutes, give you that information, well, now it's worth it for sure.
It's so nice because I hear you play back to of the more conceptual things that we talked yesterday. One is it's not about humans versus machine. It's really how you can use the machine to go and augment, to co-design, to co-create, to collaborate, and also that's the second part, which is and then take the machine to tap into all that knowledge that is out there. But it's just there's so much, and you don't know how to go and really take it in and condense it in exactly what you need, and then leverage it. And AI lets you do that, right? So we spent time on that as well within the innovation section.
Right.
So it was very interesting to hear you now express that in a specific industry. Cool. Any other opportunities that you see, or you cover this? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I see at least a short-term, possibly a mid-term opportunity that I don't see a lot of law firms think about, which is serving as support to their corporate clients in helping them navigate the Gen AI transformation. The biggest firms in the world have teams of people trying to test the tools, trying to figure out what works. Corporate legal tends not to have those resources. But I think to the point of lawyer personality, lawyers, especially partners, really love to be expert, right? The trusted advisor. So it's uncomfortable for them to reach out to clients and say, have some confident humility of like, we're all trying to figure this out. We don't have the answers at the moment, but what we would like to do is co-design the future with you. What I hear from all of my friends who are in in-house departments is they just don't have the time to be reaching out to all their firms to figure out what their Gen AI strategy is, but they are elated when their firms reach out to them and say, can we help you through this workshop? Can we do these activities together to help get our teams up to speed simultaneously? So I think there's a service offering there that might fly under the radar.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I couldn't agree more. For law firms that embrace this moment, there really is an opportunity to lead the market because, there are some firms that have been the top bankruptcy firm for 100 years, right? And sort of they are that, and their reputation is at the top of the market. The clients go to them because it's a safe bet to use them when you've got a bankruptcy problem, and it builds and builds and builds. And so it's harder to break into, here, I have a new firm, I want to be the bankruptcy firm at the top of the market. Nobody's at the top of the market in this area if you look back 2 years. So the firms that are really seizing the moment, that are really leaning into this, and that requires a lot of internal culture, infrastructure, creativity. But if you have the right sort of DNA and you lean into this moment, you can be a market leader pretty quickly because it's sort of a green field.
I keep saying unprecedented, but it really is an unprecedented opportunity, like you said, to build something new. And Tamika, shared the famous Wayne Gretzky quote earlier. And when I talk with law firms, what do you think is like the biggest question a law firm wants to know about Gen AI if they're working with a consultant?
I don't know.
What are other law firms doing?
Oh, I should have.
Always.
That was so obvious.
What is it? And I think to his point, once you're looking at what another law firm is already evidently doing, you're looking at the past, right? Yeah. Instead of trying to shape a future, but it requires this growth mindset and this shift in thinking about new possibilities.
Right.
And taking problem solving into future solving. That's another theme that came up yesterday.
Right.
And like non-disruptive creation. We will be disrupted as a knowledge work industry, as all will, but there are pockets where we can create new things that don't disrupt what we're doing, but build new expertise.
Well, you got great jobs at a great time, right?
We do.
You're at the cusp of a reinvention of a 200-year-old business or a 200-year-old profession, which is very exciting. Now, with all those opportunities that you see, Ed, I see you shine, both of you. So, you really like what you're doing,
we
right?
do.
Excellent. Where do you see the challenges?
Oh, well, there's plenty of those too, always, right? I think...
We have 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, well, I think the challenges are often that law firms traditionally don't have a culture that is supportive of this R&D mindset. There's in in-house legal departments, I think that's true also, is you have to have an environment where there's a certain amount of comfort with discomfort. Where it's okay to fail. There has to be a lot of purposeful attention to culture, which is not something law firms are historically great at. But if you do create an environment where there's this kind of continuous improvement mindset, and where people are open to feedback, open to hearing, I don't think this thing we do works as well as it could, and we could do it better. If you create that environment, you have enormous opportunity, but that is not traditionally what lawyer cultures look like.
Excellent. Really well said.
And Lorie covered all the sort of big cultural issues, which are enormous. So I'll just focus on a couple concrete challenges. I think because of the way lawyers bill for their time in firms, carving out the time that you need to focus on this is a huge challenge. And because there's so much lateral movement that was accelerated because of the pandemic and people have less loyalty to their firms, I think leaders are afraid to carve out that time and lose some of their partners because it's cutting into the bottom line by taking them off their billable tasks, but it's essential to do. I think the second challenge is an adoption challenge. This is a very different type of technology. It doesn't rely on network effects like something like social media, where John and Lorie are on Facebook, and I have FOMO, so I want to be on Facebook. And then I get on there and I see how you're using it, and I either replicate or avoid your behavior over time, but it's very, very transparent. Gen AI is totally different, and everybody's reading the headlines, but usually when you poll rooms of lawyers, very few of them are using it regularly, outside of maybe some co-pilot testing. And so developing methods to reward the people in your organizations who are power users and get them to really lead the charge and be the cheerleaders for Gen AI, I think requires some intentionality and development of new metrics and ways of surfacing that.
Yeah. It's really this notion of you need to perform and transform at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And it's always hard to find time for that transformation that you need to get into.
Yeah.
That's where this ambidextrous leadership notion is coming in as well. So I can see the challenge. And by the way, if it's some consolation, you're not the only industry with struggling with that. I see it everywhere. Okay, with that, let's see if there's any questions from the audience. Please, over there. There's a mic.
Hi, I'm Matt Stash from Constellation Energy, and the question I have for all of you is, I'm sure most of us that are out here have dealt with the Gen AI solution as creating some type of internal contained environment, right? Where you have your own chat GPT that's inside your four walls. And I think that the biggest challenge that we're having, especially with our legal department, whether they're using it for themselves or just allowing other parts of or functions within our company to use it, is going outside of our four walls. How have you found that companies are navigating that discussion? Are they still trying to stay contained in privacy, security boundaries and whatnot? Or where are some of the companies and how are they getting themselves comfortable, particularly with their legal departments, in taking advantage of some of the things that happen more in open space, if at all?
Right. So what I'm seeing with our clients is, you know, to your very good point, that when it comes to confidential, proprietary information, certainly privileged information, you very much do need to contain that. And, you know, putting it in some of these public GAI things, it's like going to a bar and leaving it on a table, right? You can't do that. But there's a world of resources and information outside your company. So I think a lot of it is training your folks, and that of course all your business people want to use that, right? They all want to, you know, move fast. Salespeople particularly want to move fast. And you don't. There's opportunity, but you don't want it to turn into the complete Wild West. And so kind of I see companies trying to train their folks on how do you safely and securely make use of the external resources and take that information and use it and make good use of it, and at the same time cabin and protect your own proprietary and confidential and privileged information. So that gets down to training and policies and training and what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I think it's a leadership issue on the GC's side. If I think about legal education and law schools, for example, you have law schools who are taking this approach of like, we're banning ChatGPT because it's cheating, right? Yep. And then you have a whole school full of secret cyborgs, that's Ethan Malick's term for it, who are all using ChatGPT. They're just figuring out how to work around the rules, right? So it's about either teaching people how to use the pool safely or expecting that they're going to swim in it with no safeguards. And the GCs that I've seen leading the charge are very much embracing the technology and want to be a trusted partner for their business clients because they understand the imperative. And those are good GCs. Those are the GCs that a C-suite wants in the fold, right? But you will also have GCs who are very afraid and rely and fall back upon the traditional lawyer personality of, we don't understand this, it's too risky, we're going to shut it down. But ultimately, if your job is to facilitate the business interests of your client, to Lorie's point, you need to be constantly educating, but also providing ways for the corporation to really safely experiment with this technology. In our work, we do workshops with law firm partners to take away the sensitive information completely and create hypothetical exercises where the partners can use frontier models and understand the capacity to be creative, to help you think through business problems. Because if you too narrowly focus on the things that are already, you know, permissible to use with sensitive data, you're missing the forest for the trees and missing the capacity when we're ultimately able to bring those tools in-house.
Wow, so well said. Any other questions? That was the kicker, yeah.
So I'm Brian Mattamore. We have an innovation agency, and early on, we dreaded having lawyers in our ideation session. You know, they're mismatchers and they're negative and they're risk averse and all the rest. But as it moved along, we discovered that lawyers, especially on strategy sessions, could be really, really good because they'd question assumptions and they became real assets, frankly, and then they became evangelists for some of the approaches we were taking. So what I'd like to ask you, is there a specific story you can tell where a lawyer transformed from being a negative naysayer into an evangelist for using these AI processes? I'm looking for a specific anecdote.
Go ahead if you
I don't know if you have it or not, but.
I mean, I've seen a lot of transformation in lawyer embrace of Gen AI. This is a different question that I'm answering, so forgive me. But we were going to talk about this myth of the digital native and this myth that younger people are embracing this technology more than older people are. I don't see that at all.
Not at all.
This is an anecdote. I did a presentation and I had an 80-year-old lawyer come up to me, and she told me she was 80, and she said, "This is the most breathtaking technology I've ever seen. She was a psychologist and a lawyer. She said, I'm taking all my notes, I'm uploading them into this tool, I'm developing templates and frameworks that other people can use with their clients. And then I have 25-year-olds that I teach who are used to really slickly designed, algorithmic, traditional AI software who think that this is like garbage technology, right? It's not sleek, it doesn't give them exactly what they want. So again, I really do think it goes back to mindset and the people who are always open to change and see that things are not perfect the way that we do them now, and we could do things better and have more enjoyable practice lifestyles are the ones that I see as converts.
Yeah, I was thinking, I had to think of an answer to your very good question. I think at first, at least at Seyfarth sometimes, we had folks who somehow would equate efficiency with, then now I'm going back historically, kind of somehow it must be lower quality or it's not as sophisticated because if you can do it faster, it must be like, kind of cruddy work product. But as we kept showing and sharing use cases and showing examples, we do a quarterly innovation call where we are constantly sharing stories and examples of success, and actually made a really purposeful choice to not focus on the efficiency, although that's really, really important, but to focus on how it was upskilling people and how it was leading to even more sophisticated and creative, corporate deal structures and different approaches to complex litigation. You started seeing people say, oh, well, if it's about sophisticated work, then I'm about sophisticated work. And so they would start embracing it. And I think, lawyers also, among their many other traits, they're usually pretty ambitious and they want to do well and they want to be at the top of their game. And so when you help people understand that this wasn't about, cheap and cheerful, but it was really about complex, sophisticated, innovative thinking aligned with somebody who's a sophisticated corporate lawyer who structures deals in a really innovative way, that Marty Lipton creating the poison pill was innovation. That when you'd start thinking about it that way, all of a sudden you saw this adoption from people who were kind of skeptics in the past.
What a nice way to finish. Thank you for your question. It was really good because sorry, we're running out of time. You have to catch them during the break. Sorry, folks. But thank you for the question, setting them up beautifully. I was going to ask you for your closing statement, but I think you just made it. It was really good. So Lorie and Jen, thank you so much. I mean, I look at the legal. I will never look at the legal profession like I used to do in the past anymore. So thank you for inspiring me, and thank you for inspiring us.
Thank you for having us.
Give them a warm round of applause.